Good everyone, in this video today we have a Should You Talisman episode on the SBD-3 Dauntless. This is, of course, one of the many vehicles in our Should You Talisman series, and we have had a bit of a break from the usual stuff. We've obviously been doing vehicles that are a bit higher in BR and stuff like that. But, well, it's about time we get back to it because, well, we've got a lot of other stuff to cover. So as per usual with this series, in the description below there's going to be the usual timestamps where you'll see the weaponry, armour, engine, etc. You'll see a test flight of the vehicle and of course the competition and conclusion. So if you want to skip ahead to that, please do feel free to do so. Without further ado, let's get in and discuss the weaponry, armour and engine of the SBD-3 Dauntless. This is also just going to be a brief mention. Gaijin, give us more SBDs. I want the SBD-5. That's all I'm going to say in that regard. So, starting off with the weaponry, we have two 50 caliber machine guns in the nose, which these guns used to have a shitload of ammo back in the day, but now they only have 180 rounds a piece, which is quite shameful, but oh well. They have pretty good power output in terms of damage, but of course they are early war 50 cals. That's why I want the SBD-5, because then we can actually have some mid wars. But that's just me. Coming around to the rear, we have two 30 caliber machine guns in a rear mounting with 2,000 rounds. You're not really going to be using this, but at a push you can shoot at enemy bombers with it from underneath. I mean, you don't have 90 degrees of vertical coverage, but it's something to consider. You do also have pretty good horizontal coverage, so there is that. But of course, that's really it for the main armament at the moment, but there is a bit more to the SBD, which really solidifies it. Coming over to the engine, we have the Wright Cyclone R18 2052 with 944 horsepower on WEP. This is a bit underpowered, I will admit, but it's more than enough to get the SBD to where it needs to go, and of course, with it being a bomber spawn, yeah, you should be fine, and it should be more than enough to deal with whatever you need to do. Going over to the armour, we do have a little bit of bulletproof glass in the front, a little bit of armour around the pilot's back, and of course some armour for the rear gunner, which I'm sure he appreciates that because he's kind of open, but, well, all I'll say is I would not want to be the rear gunner on an SBD anytime soon, but that's me. Coming over to the armament, we do have quite a bit now, and of course we do have EFS, which is always nice, but it's not really going to save us in the long run. Belts, I recommend ground targets on the 12.7 and armor targets on the 7.62 because it's better than default. And this is where we need to bring up something which the SBD also has. It has custom loadouts now, which they're not the hugest in terms of like customizability, but it's enough. And I'll be honest, you can have some pretty good fun with it. As you'll see, the current loadout I've got on this plane at the minute is the gun pods plus the 500-pound bomb. And as you can see, there is quite a bit you can do. So obviously you can bring a big 1,600-pound bomb if you want, which is nice and all. There is obviously a 1,000-pound bomb. There's also the naval mine, which is quite nice. This has more power than the 1,000 if you want to use that, but just bear in mind it can be a bit buggy against ground targets. There's another AP bomb, there's a single 500-pounder, and then there's some 100s you can put on the wings as well. Then, of course, we'll come to the gun pods, which are the same as on the Apache, except we get early war belts, not mid wars. But yeah, this isn't too bad. Like, you get 680 rounds between the two guns in each gun pod. You can even make it so that you can have one gun pod on one side. You then have the 100-pounder on this side if you want. Of course, you'd have to be a masochist to do that. So that's why I take the 500-pounder plus the two gun pods. It's just more comfortable that way. You can also take the naval mine plus a gun pod. It just comes down to what you want, really. So it's all down to you. But the fact is, this plane has gotten a nice little buff with its gun pods and the 500-pound bomb because that always helps out. And it's a really good plane in ground RB anyway because it can take a bit of a beat if it has to. And most importantly, it can now bring gun pods and a bomb. So that's always very useful to have. And you can definitely see why this thing has a bit of a reputation for hunting bombers these days. So overall, not bad at all. Like, this has a pretty good overall fair share of characteristics and everything. And, well, you can bring gun pods on a bomb. So that's very useful, and the gun pods will shred tanks in Ground RB. So, without further ado, let's go into a test flight and let's see how the vehicle handles. See you shortly. And welcome to the test flight. So I will warn you, it is very buggy trying to get this thing off the carrier, so I might struggle a bit. I'm going to have to use some rudder here. For some reason, the plane likes to go to the right. For some reason, it's trying to crash into the carrier there. I'm not sure why. It just does that. And there we go. Finally got our catapult launch. Can be a bit buggy. Just bear that in mind if you're going to do a test flight in the Dauntless these days. So, yeah. But otherwise, the climbing performance and the overall performance is not why you'd play this thing. I'm going to state that off the bat. Obviously, with decent rear gunner coverage, you can gunship AI and things like that. You can't really engage ground targets, but you can engage them over the sides of the aircraft if you need to. But what this thing really does well is the fact that it can relatively handle itself. Obviously, not at low speed, as you can see here. It is a bit of a pig at low speed. And obviously, with an extra 500-pound bomb underneath it, it's not going to enjoy that. But the fact is, once you get rid of that bomb, it's not too bad. Obviously, you still have the weight of the gun pods to consider, but the fact is that once you get it up to some speed and you have your bomber spawn, it can maneuver relatively well. Obviously, I can't really demonstrate that now, but it's not too bad. You've just got to consider the weight. It is still a dive bomber at the end of the day. It's not going to be the best in terms of its offensive capabilities against actual dogfighters at its own altitude. So make sure to consider that when it comes to it. But as you're going to see, a single bomb drop is more than devastating on something like a destroyer. And, well, let's add one more for good measure. Why not? And that's a hitbox bug, so that perfectly proves how good guidance things are. Gotta love a hitbox bug these days. It's not like we have enough of those. But it just perfectly shows, like, this thing can be a bit of a pig when at its own altitude with another aircraft. It's a bit like the Helldiver. Excuse me. The Helldiver's in the same boat, but obviously the Helldiver's a little bit lighter, so there is that. But, as I say, it's not really a plane where you're going to be consistent all the time. But the fact is, you get a bomber spawn, unlike here, where obviously we're just using this to demonstrate. And the simple fact is when you've got this much forward firepower at 2.0, where you can fight biplanes, and it's quite durable, and you even get the option of air brakes, yeah, this thing can be pretty fun, that's for sure. Anyway, let's head back to the hangar and discuss this aircraft's competition. See you shortly. Welcome back to the hangar. So, as I say, we'll quickly discuss the competition because there is still a decent bit of competition. With the Vindicator being a bit of a pig as well, it can be a bit one where you have to decide what you prefer. If you want something with a little less firepower but a bit more maneuverability, the Devastator is definitely a better option for this. Of course, the Vindicator, as I've said, is a bit of a pig itself, but it does have a 50 cal rear gunner, so there is a consideration for that. But another one to consider for a fun bomber intercepting bomber is the TBF Avenger. I've been actually having quite a bit of fun in this. The British one, that is, because it's rank 2. I can actually do my dailies in that. And it's quite fun. It's obviously not the best plane, but it's relatively durable, has a 50 cal ball turret, twin 50s in the front, and has a pretty decent bomb load as well. So I tend to have a pretty decent amount of fun in the TBF Avenger, but obviously I wouldn't recommend a US one. If you're going to buy, like, if you want an Avenger, get the British one. But in terms of fighters, same as before, P-36C, F3F, etc. There's nothing really to discuss here, to be honest. We've covered this before. Obviously, the P-36A is a little bit of a lower option if you want that, but that's pretty normal. And yeah, this is just pretty much what you would expect at this point. Things like the Kingfishers are just awful. The Catalinas are they're relaxing, but they're not anything to write home about. And the Mariner, whilst it can be a bit of a weird one, it's definitely not consistent because it's just far too of a pig, and not only that, it catches fire way too easily. So that brings me on to the conclusion. If you really want something where you can have a good bit of fun hunting bombers, this is definitely one to consider, but just bear in mind you will regret it once you lose your bomber spawn. So make sure to use your altitude sparingly, because this thing is not going to get it back anytime soon. And if you're bringing the extra 500 pounder like me and you're on the deck, you're going to feel the weight difference. And trust me, it is a painful one. But that being said, this is definitely the most fun bomber hunting experience that you can have in the low tiers. And if you want something to just relax with and just do a little fight of grinding along the way to like rank 2, rank 3, this is definitely a good option. Anyway, I'm going to leave it all to it for today. I really hope you enjoyed seeing the SBD-3 Dauntless featured as part of the Should You Talisman series, and I'll see you all on the next one.